Our next reader is DJ Lee.
Thank you, Liz. And it's just so great to be able to follow my good friend Petra Kuppers in this reading. It's a supreme privilege to be here with everyone, all of these amazing poets today. Thanks so much to Nature Culture and Writing the Land, and especially to the incredible Liz McLaughlin for working with me in my creative but also chaotic life right now. I write mostly in the prose poem and lyric essay form, so I really appreciated hearing Ross read from his Book of Delights this morning. My first is a prose poem written this winter as I've been going through cancer treatment. It's about a place called Zion, Illinois, at Illinois Beach State Park, which is about 30 miles north of Chicago, where I'm living right now. What I like to acknowledge about Chicago is it's the third largest urban indigenous population in the United States right now, with more than 65,000 Native Americans in the greater metropolitan area from more than 175 different tribes. So this prose poem is called Outside Zion. I summited a mountain, found a palm of gold veins in a hole under the dirt, walked on sand pond next to a great lake. My daughter's belly blossomed and the ice thickened. Far below, pockets, hollow as bird bone. I'll have a normal lifespan after all, or I won't. We could not exchange indoor air. Mama Michigan's waves froze in motion and time outside Zion. I watch icicles grow on the barren branches of a lilac. Hear a quarrel of sparrows in the low shrubs. The hole punched through my back where the tube goes in. I will eat brown bread around a campfire with my daughter, her daughter. My avian companions survive winters on seeds hidden beneath the snow. And the second is more of a lyric essay. It actually comes from my book, Remote, Finding Home in the Bitterroots. And it's called Recycle. And it's based on many trips with a bush pilot into a remote ranger station in the middle of this huge 1.3 million acre wilderness on the Idaho-Montana border in the northern Rocky Mountains. There's a little camp spot just above the old bridge, the bush pilot says. The King Post Truss Bridge first crossed North Moose Creek there. I flew in there one fall. His face is a terrain of peaks and ravines. We're at his house on a mountainside in North Idaho watching rain fill a valley. He's talking about his favorite dog, a Malamute named Sitka, a relative of animals used by the 10th Mountain Division in World War II. Sitka hiked thousands of miles with the pilot through the Selway Bitterroot in the 1960s when he was wilderness ranger, a story he retells often. I remember that night like it was yesterday, he says, green baseball cap shading his eyes. I flew into the Bitterroots, and that night, Sitka, he went round and round and round trying to get comfortable, to bed down for the night, see? Next morning, his whole rear end was shot. His hips were bothering him tremendously. We got up and walked into the shade. A lot of cow elk and some calves, a lot of barking. Sitka was hurting. I let him sniff around, and I guess that's where I decided this was the spot. I think of my grandmother daughter of the bitter roots, of quilts from thrift store hand-me-downs, of pies from apples at the edge of rot, of socks darned, jeans patched. She repurposed everything before the concept was popular because, she said, that's how you live in the backcountry. Sitka was happily sniffing, the pilot says, and I dispatched him there. His eyes aren't sad. They're bright against the rain. I went back every spring thereafter for years, and the dog just melded into the ground until there was no more Sitka. Oh, he was there, but he was part of 1,000 living things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DJ. So glad you could be with us.
Thank you.
Our next reader is Mary Brancaccio.
Thank you. And thank you for organizing this and just bringing us all together in this wonderful community. The language and the ideas over the past few days have been wonderful. So thank you. I'm going to read from Writing the Land, and I'll read two of the poems that I wrote for Normanton Farms, which is part of the New Hampshire Agrarian Trust. And the first poem was based on my visit there, my first visit there on a very, very rainy Saturday in May. And it's called Heaven's Breath. Here, human time surrenders to another keeper of records. A greater clock measures by tree rings and mutations, by fossil record and ancient artifacts of Pennacook people who farmed this land for thousands of years before the French and English came. Above the Merrimack, mist ghosts the waters, banks rising to rich pastures, leaves silver beaded as rain blesses a thirsty earth. Morning showers invite a bird feast. Robins, longspurs, crows, and bluebirds flit through the meadow, hunting worms and beetles among its grasses. Its sheaves are thick and glossy, seed heads fat and firm. Among blades of winter rye, buttercups, red clover, and bluets. Further on, a wild sprinkling of yellow bird's foot and purple lupine. Below the hill, a herd of cattle bellows melodies of birth and nurture. 4 cows with new calves keep their distance as I approach the fence. 1 heifer gambols across the pasture, kicking her heels in a show of agility before curiosity gets the better of her, and she circles back to greet me, nostrils flaring to catch my scent. 2 redwings light on fence posts. Trilling, they take to the air in wide arcs, skimming trees beneath purple-gray clouds. Hens nestle wing to wing on grass in open-air coops. Cheeping softly, they seem contented by their flock's warmth on a cool morning, as if the business of the day were rest and conversation as they wait out the rain. Along the pasture's edge, a creek courses over granite, strumming notes of its own design. Fiddleheads open as lush fronds. Along the mossy banks, families of pines, mother trees sheltering nurslings, their branches greening with growth. I wait and listen as ancient rhymes flicker from root to root. This is a healing land. Its wisdom runs deep. And the second is based on the Crosby chicken, which is a pretty widely raised chicken and one that is being raised at Normanton. Self-portrait as a Crosby fledgling. An old woman lifts me from among hundreds, and I'm alarmed, flapping and cackling, though she holds me fast, tucking my featherless wings against her chest until I quiet. Once I used my egg tooth to break free of what confined me. To birth oneself is arduous work. It started with an urge to crack my shell, to sip the air outside. Soon I learned I was not alone. Hundreds, if not thousands, of other chicks had done this work as well. A generation of featherless offspring, we looked strange to one another, our wings bony and bare. The world was cold and threatening until we learned to band together, a flock of flightless creatures, pitifully gangly. But time grew us quills and downy feathers and gave our wings some use. Small flights that led to perches, a place of comfort and safety. Between my beak and claws, I can defend myself most days against the hawk and skunk, mad killers of my kind. The meaning of life eludes me. So many of my days are spent chasing food and shelter, water and food and warmth and company. It's not what I would call a rarefied existence. I live in an eat or be eaten world. The ones who eat have two eyes, front and center. The prey see side to side so as to spot what's coming. I turn one eye toward the woman. Her two eyes gaze at me. She looks like an eater, but she is cooing as if somewhere inside her lives a feathered soul. Our eyes lock. I can feel the pulse in her fingertips against my body. My heartbeat is faster than hers. My lungs fill and empty to a quicker pace. But for this moment, we see eye to eye. Then she lets me go, and I fly into the circle of my flock. It's hella confusing, getting singled out. And then one last poem. This poem actually happened during a visit to my friend Maggie Nelson's ranch out in Kingman, Arizona. And it's called Birthing Pigs in Kingman, Arizona. Birth, such grunting madness. Sow charges across her pen, red-eyed, all hooves and dirt. Blood and urine slosh into mud beneath her trampling feet. So we dash to rescue each newborn as it drops. Here's the runt. Maggie passes me, her tiny body, cold and pale, half my daughter's size at birth. Snorts and screeches of sow's labor carry in the wind this biting March dawn. I wipe placenta from her snout, urge this dying runt to life. Mother impulse. I tuck her in my shirt, near my heart, and wear her as she sleeps. Her cool skin warms until it matches mine. Maggie trims the tails and canine teeth of every newborn, then counts. 16. Runt still alive? She squints. I look beneath my jacket. When I rub her bony chest, she stretches and whines. All night I cradle that pink-eared runt, feed her bottles of warmed cow's milk. Coyotes yap and circle the ranch. We doze. Across a moonless sky, a comet paints trails of green and yellow light. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Our next reader is Robert Carr.
Thank you, Liz, and thank everyone who's part of the festival. It's an extraordinary event. I'm reading today from the land of the Maine's Wabanaki tribes, the Penobscot Nation, Passamaquoddy tribe, Holton Band of Maliseet, and Aroostook Band of Micmacs. I'm sharing poems from my new manuscript called The Heavy of Human Clouds, which includes poems from the Writing the Land project. The shortest season. I gather scarabs from giant marigolds, white rugosa roses, copper-winged, iridescent-headed, paired beads mate between bedsheet petals. Picked off like blackberries, life trembles, frantic between knuckles, rebellion in a closed fist. I drop bodies in a bowl of soapy water. The legs of jewels stop moving. This is the shortest season. Imago, winged and bright and hungry. So many dead. Bottles with the cap on, drifting on a sea where nothing sinks and nothing opens. Oceans, poisoned by a drink of water. Press on fingernails, surf in curls along the shore, plastic swirls in eddies of vast, muzzled phantoms, bobbing clear and blue and winking in the light that was. Breath of rise and fall, rippled six-pack rings. Once, I flapped arms toward Mom as Penobscot riptides took me out. She waved from shore, didn't realize. I flailed. Loss, a shade of summer. Salt's taste is green. 60 years of tissue, gasping. I've split the ash and now I read Anne Sexton. I've spent the morning splitting ash and could now sit all day in the mouth of my wood stove, its maw slightly open, hoping to burn my tongue. The sofa's soft denim, braided rugs pooling all over the room, the wind chime clanging in curl at the back door, white-capped November lake. Is this the end I want? Backdoor bells, this inanimate book of deadened songs that cover the second voice in my head, the phone on mute. I stand at an unscreened window. Gray-green water moves beneath the gray-green wind. Pine needles cling, wet lashes beneath my breath, and the saddest gale. The house is heating up. I must put on my shoes, get out, kick the fallen mice, the acorns in the drive. Banished from flowers. I live contained by pestilence, yet bees move through my pelvis, honeycombed. In solitude, blood reverses course, artery becomes vein. 2. The essentials of survival grow in dirt beneath my nails, sacrificial radish, curled tendrils of slicing cuke. Have you searched compost in your loneliness? 3. On limpid days, I punch knots out the pine boards of my apiary, blurred by swarms, cerebral desire to be stung. With each day, reasons to wear clothes fall away. 4. Body. You're my tallest drink of nectar. I'll oil you down. Drink chlorine from cock. Vitality bleached. Your sweat has let me know you're also frightened. 5. Under an outdoor shower, no one near. It's kind of sexy when my fingers slide through unprotected knuckle. I've made peace with swelling. My rings only removed when soaked. 6. I sort splinters from a crate of memorabilia. Breath droplets fall like promises from a mouth. Box cutters and buzz killers haunt in my containment. And the final poem I'm reading is titled After Boston Falls. And I'd like to dedicate this to the people of Ukraine. Beetle blues, my ancient boy, I'll be your ridge, your suture, needle-legged grooves rub our favorite record. You call me. I'm dashing over white lines in never-ending passing lanes. Mandible, I hear song shrilling through your boneless shell. Hold vials of once man's sweat in my casings. Climb the harp-like Luna wings of a giant bridge. Race against the cobalt compound eye of a clock tower. Descend into an upper lip. Metropolis, I palp your pain. It's okay, baby, hold on. I'll drag you from hills of dismembered men. We'll get back to insect kisses behind the moon. Roses green, upturned trees, twisted metal, tarsal spurs. Bug abandoned, I run to your chur. A cockroach tickles the cuff of jeans, debates the black hairs of my calf, distracts me from your signal. I stumble, flip, bloodied hands. A stucco wall the Buddha painted, a halted carousel, glass towers numbered for 6 million without steam. When I find you in the carcass of the general, I will touch you everywhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robert. Our next reader is Kathy Kremins.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lise, for creating, and Liz, for creating such a special place to gather for the weekend. I humbly speak today from Muncie Lenape land, and I offer this reading in memory of Elijah McLean, Trayvon Martin, and Breonna Taylor, with love and concern for my trans students and friends, and in solidarity with the people of Ukraine as they fight to stay free. The first poem I'm going to read is one of 3 poems that I wrote initially for Writing the Lands project in 2021. I've fallen in love with the land, so there are many other poems that will continue to be written about Muddy Pond in Kingston, Massachusetts, which is cared for by the Northeast Wilderness Trust. So this poem is entitled Hum a Home. Much is made of late winter light, how the angle of March sun darkens the sky into azure blue. So diving into the pine forest splashes solitude reflected off Muddy Pond. On next visit, spring will perform her symphony opening sonata accompanied by toads, frogs, insects, salamanders in vernal pools, then Andante. Gentle emergence, wildflowers, painted turtles. But today, long shadows of winter are my companions. The sounds of my boots on fallen needles, pine cones, rocks, mud, oak leaves under stubborn snow. The pond glimmer stops me, frozen with stillness, then the beating of my heart, rhythm of my breath. When you hear the quiet, don't fill it with words or noise. Let the geese call and the wind answer. Gather the notes inside where silent nature hums a home. The next 2 poems are from my chapbook, which will be out in June, called Undressing the World, through Finishing Line Press. And these 2 poems are from the urban landscape of my childhood, Newark, New Jersey. My mother's hands. Those hands, 87 years of your history imprinted on calloused fingertips and broad palms that my bottom knows too well. Blue, purple veins coursing a map of work, motherhood, and love in all that you've touched. Cutting turf in the bogs of Roscommon, signing your name in a pained scrawl in the Ellis Island logbook, caressing the strong thigh of the only man you ever loved, testing TV tubes in the slate gray Newark factory, bathing my tiny body with hard hands gone soft with mother love, slicing meat for the sandwiches in the college cafeteria, all the education you ever needed, you said. So what must it have been like for you to come home from church to find Dad still, breathless, lying on the couch, your hands moving over his forehead, across cheeks and closed eyes, memorizing his face, resting your head where his once beating heart lay quiet, filled with a profound silence. How does grief become so small that it can be carried in the palm of one's hand? On burning. It is September of my 6th grade year, and the highway is coming, and vacant lots where houses, somebody's home, turned our block into a jumble of broken glass, dangerous to the touch, razor sharp and smelling like Paps, and gardens of tires set on fire by teenagers. Bought out by the state, her home for 20 years, Mrs. Cannon's house with its grease-spattered kitchen, bedroom ceiling marked with circles of smoke from her husband's cigarettes, screened-in porch where her 2 sons played bicycle gladiators, its wooden walls cut and gouged last week, was plowed into a heap of wood. We stand in the streets in the early morning, lit up by the sparks, as the firemen water down the roof of our houses and the few others that still remain, while little pieces of fire jump through the air, my home saved, in this neighborhood where sparks are flying and buildings are crumbling to ash, and my mother expects me to go to school after another night of burning. And this next poem, the last few poems that I'm going to read are all poems that have been written in the past 2 years. And this poem, I'm reading it today actually because it's a conversation that Mary Brancaccio and I had yesterday about the long history of friendship between the Cherokee Nation and the people of Ireland. So thank you, Mary. So I'm reading this for you. It's called Reclamation. So many ways to kill a people over centuries. Now this virus attacking elders and native speakers of languages almost extinct, barely alive and breathing, with each death a loss. A word, a sentence, an idea, a memory, for so long saved in secret, defiance of oppression to crush a culture and spirit, eliminate Salagi, replace with English, control the narrative. Years of whispered stories, recording truths. So when time comes, making a list is easy. Vaccinate elders first, honor their place, preserve their promise through learning language, as I remember the story of my grandmother, answering the door of her thatched cottage home in the west of Ireland, bog country. While my grandfather taught Irish illegally in the back bedroom, she faced 2 British black and tans, knowing they would make her husband disappear if discovered. Annie, as the story goes, spoke kindly and gently in Irish, de luchtum, raised her knitting needles, stabbed the 2 officers, flesh wounds, but enough pain and distraction for Martin and his students to escape through the wet fields with guns and poetry to fight another day. This next poem's a haibun. So it's a prose poem that ends with a haiku. It's called Emergence. Something about turning fear into curiosity, how comfort slows our growth as spring shares its delights, sparks desire, longing to know species names of rhododendron, hyacinth, meadowsweet, periwinkle, rose, magnolia, alder from another's mouth. I need voices of different pitches and timbers, a tumble from the linear of lived life into a cherished calm of chaos through 1,000 seasons. In your luminous eyes, I hear you building a world. Azalea, Spirea, Muscari, Vinca, Heliberis, Magnolia, Allness. A reminder that not all changes. Look for the familiar in the sprouting and blooming. For when the fireflies come, we will go to the meadow where all will be shaken. Light show of magical flashes, a dance you know in your body. You too shine. And I'm going to end with, this has been such a carefully and cared for weekend. And so I'm going to leave everyone with a love poem. So this is for everyone who's touched me. Blue Fields. Let me begin again as pitch pine, loved by wind of intense tones, gently stroked by breeze, blown sideways in blizzard, our intimacy accompanied by birdsong. As I whisper deeply from long needles, cry out from the shortest, a frenzy of sounds carved out of such still silence. Let me begin again, walk blue fields with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Our next reader is JuPong Lin.
Oops. Hello, everyone. I want to thank Lise for all your work, planning, rehearsing, general poet wrangling, and Liz for your technical support. I live in Nipmuc and Nonotuck land, whose colonial name is Amherst, Massachusetts, and I work in unceded Musqueam territory, whose colonial name is Port Townsend, Washington. Sorry, I accidentally muted myself. I'm going to start with a short poem about my dad, for my dad, whose birthday was yesterday, his 89th birthday. And then after that, I'm going to read one of my poems that has instructions for folding paper canoe embedded. So if anyone would like to follow along as I fold the canoe, you might want to have a piece of square paper ready to do that with me. Failure to assimilate. 2010. What if at bedside on his last day of life, he only wants to sing an old lullaby taught by invaders of Taiwan, his home, his born place? This next one is part of a series of storm poems. This one was written for Dorian, Storm Dorian. My people sent me a canoe. Last night, my people sent me a yellow canoe, floating gently into my dreams. Flash flood of flash floods, brooks surge into rivulets, rivers tear down trees, waves crest the windowsill, water splinters glass. My arms shoot out for my babies, all grown by day, but in my dreams, time winds back. Their quivering bodies hover near mine. We look for escape routes through one tiny window. Flooded to our necks, we see the rescue vessel. How to fold a canoe. Fold in half, then sides to center. Accordion fold. Corners to wrong side. Fold in half to find gold. Fold tiny corners. Unfold. Push in penny to reverse fold. A fold in time compresses 2,000 years, racing from Abaco and Grand Bahama to Nova Scotia. Storm Dorian makes ruins of the mud. Year 500, Taino people find refuge in the Bahamas. Year 1492, Columbus lands, commits genocide. Year 1807. Enslaved people flee, find refuge in the Bahamas. Seminoles flee U.S. Army, find refuge in the Bahamas. Tourists seek escape from colonial life, find refuge in the Bahamas. Year 2019, Haitian immigrants find refuge in the mud. People trade risk for a place to live. Disasters are not natural, Von Medig says. Disaster is designed into the homes of vulnerable people. We settlers, safely inland, learn to design disaster for vulnerable people, building into their homes accumulated risk. Fold up sides, float canoe, whisper into it, enough is enough. Burn canoe to send to your ancestors. Fold another for Black lives. Fold another for Indigenous resurgence. Whisper, enough is enough. A prayer to disrupt unnatural disaster. This next one is, I'm just going to read an excerpt of a long piece called Taiwan Isn't How Our People Called Our Homeland. And it's a kind of, I do these kind of weird academic poems where it's my way of trying to incorporate and understand and unpack academic theories. So this is there'll be some references to scholars that I admire. We still call Taiwan our homeland. 5 decades after leaving for good, my parents thought. We still call our homeland Taiwan, though my mother says in her childhood, I didn't even know who I am. What country did I belong? We called Taiwan our home, even as we swore allegiance to another land, the land now called Chicago, the land of the 3 fires, Potawatomi, Ottawa, Chippewa. Mom, how do you say homeland in Taiwanese? Goyang, Goyang, born place, she says. I say, oh, not like Tsu, which means house. When I try to say Goyang, she corrects me. No, that sounds like Kuomintang. The wrong tones, I learn, sends my tongue sliding into the name of the colonizers instead of the name of my born place. Our bodies, and by our, I mean our Taiwanese immigrant living the ravages of assimilation, bodies bow down and touch the earth. We love deep in our bones. They, the royal they, say that we, the universal we, are living in the Anthropocene. Métis scholar, fish philosopher Zoe Todd calls for indigenizing the Anthropocene. She writes, art can play a role in dismantling the condos of the art and academic worlds. In Turtle Island, the architecture of occupation shows up as condos, sleek, neutered, whitewashed walls, masquerading as home places for artists, creatives, and other exploitable beings. I, lowercase I, though autocorrect makes me manually retype I, decide to commit to a politics of refusal, a generative refusal. I refuse to kowtow to their royal English. When did kowtow, a gesture that signifies the highest sign of reverence, become a word of resignation, wrenching humility into humiliation? Our bodies, and by our, I mean our Taiwanese immigrant living the ravages of assimilation bodies, bow down and touch the earth with love echoing deep in our bones. And I'm going to pause there because I see I only have a couple minutes left. So I'm going to jump to a very recent poem, Triage. From under a canopy of hemlock and pine, We hear the streets vibrating with chants. There is no justice where there is no peace where laws do not protect, but punish young indigenous Black and brown bodies. Conviction of Ahmaud's killers, punishment will not bring him back. Shaking in the shadows of burning forests, you can hear tree in the word triage, but few cry out to triage forests lost to suburbia. There is no justice where there is no love for tree people, cedar, Himalayan, white and red, fir, Douglas and balsam, oak, black, white, and red. Looks like I have 1 more minute, so I'm going to finish with a town written for the Hilltown Land Trust. This will be coming out in this year's, one of this year's books. Here, this Hilltown pond. In the shade of fungus-festooned hemlocks and pine, foxfire-blued twigs and tender trickling of a stream melting mysteriously into moist, leafy soil hushes our happy chatter. A wooden stool appears, perched at the edge of a still pond, so inviting our feet slow to a pause. Breathe in sweet mycelial air, glimpse skyworld reflected at our toes. Bright orange globs of witch's butter, tiny white buttons, dusty puffballs, all manner of mushrooms magically appear everywhere. We walk around a decaying tree, hosting patches of jelly and bracket fungi. My companion, environmental lover and teacher, points to this dying tree. If I were a porcupine, I'd be all over that nook, she says, stepping over the waterfall beneath. You have to let go of any ego walking with kids. Mushroom Matt knows more at 7 years old than she at 27. A stone wall calls us off trail, built by Pecumtuck or Nipmuc or white settlers. We listen for the stone's story. I read that people of the northern plains wore sacred Halpoporus odoris beads. Who remembers mushroom medicine in this place near the Quinnipiac? Who's harmed by overharvest of this good medicine? I spy a tiny lone red umbrella mushroom. We gasp in awe, smiles wide as sky world. When I return, let's walk in silence. Remember these new fungi friends. Vow to listen more deeply to them and their land. Thank you.
Thank you, JuPong. Our next reader is Scott Chaskey.
Hello, and thank you to Lise for inviting me. And I am speaking to you from the ancestral homeland of the Shinnecock and the Montaukett here in Sag Harbor. There's a poem called A Breath. Meadowman, house scholar, from field to chair, I hear the deep choir of the anvil, iron and rust, irony, dust. Then Nordic beat breaks to summer. Willows wave, elderberry beads gift the cloud. Dog rose shades the shore. In a measure of rage, I know the weightlessness of innocence. At dawn, silken nursery tents spin the field to song. Sea air, violet Bethany, stare, shake the man to make of breath a mortal joy. And I thought I would read you mostly poems of this place, the eastern end of Long Island. This is called A Poem of the Night. See my father find his spring in the almost silent dark. Above an oak umbril, distant lights announce change. On a block wall facing east, we talk and accept a harmony from salt water which nips the post and reeds. Our like tenor mimics the cicada. His voice is tender and manly. His words merge with the summer wind on bark, water, and salt grass as turtles drift to the surface. He stands apart in sparse grass, and his voice becomes his being, slow, tidal as the cove backwater. His friends are distant or depart one by one. I did my time, he says. Now he rests. Even now, I resist the impulse to kneel or shatter. We name only spirits and not the nearest shadow. When night lights appear on the opposite shore, we lean on the dock for a last look at the kingfisher's perch and shallows where the heron will wade. In this meeting, a season, an evening, a second, I receive a father's seed and go to my son with a father's need to sustain his house in the universe. Here's a poem called Sagaponic. Just a little journey down the road from where I am in Sag Harbor. These reeds I see are full of tears. Summer rains simplified by grass, the pathway of water interrupted by matter. As it falls, the blue heron steps through grains of a great web. Sand, reeds, rain, translucent as years, water tangible as tears and grasses by the salt pond. Called globes, each orb of rain touched by grass, fluid in rest, reflects reeds, wings, the surface glitter of summer, clarity of dwelling in one body. Here's a poem called Cerulean. A quick breath above winter grains, the sharp-shinned hawk dives from a locust post to glide over rye and oats. Roots of umbellifera reach into cool clay. Against the dry hedge of wild berry vines and bittersweet, the cerulean flash of a bluebird. This landscape is crisp within earth's spin, not the woven story of leaves, but the bass note of bark. In boxed hives and hollows, Apis mellifera survive on the nectar of aster and goldenrod, transformed and capped in waxen cells, food for the queen of inscape, part of the golden language of renewal. The sun's breath above winter grains lights the hawk's wings, and yes, the wings of workers within the hive. Rye survives the season of frosts, and sky takes on the color of a bluebird. Here's a poem called Myriad Things, written to honor my father-in-law, William King, a great sculptor. Myriad Things. Here there is a balance, an embrace of space just over the shoulder, or the vivid emptiness an open palm reaches to touch. But these animate figures also still define space as mind, trusting to the luck of a body, can present to time the intimate, essential mystery of a thought. Looking up, these figures of paper, wood, bronze, beeswax, chiseled, cut, sewn, carved by a man, ask our imagination to laugh. Look, here, space is awake with the sculptor's words of oak and balsam, plastic, steel, Tyvek, aluminum made fluid, the elegance of Paris in burlap evening dress. A Cornish peasant of clay reading the waves of the sea, a copper Buddha under the Bodhi, awake with things that come forth through him. Let them come. Let's see what I have. I think I'll just read one more passage, and this is a passage from a book that I've been working on for the last couple of years. It's called Soil and Spirit. So this is prose, and it will be published by Milkweed Editions, in about a year. I'm sort of on the last chapter, getting there. The theme of the firefly, so I'm reading it for that. This is from a chapter called The Remembered Earth. Dusk, the swallow's hour, and a bright moon rises in the east over the North Atlantic. The ocean is near, I hear it. Just there beyond the railroad tracks in Amagansett village, a short glide for an osprey, though I cannot see it from my sheltered garden tucked into the back of a long island farm field. I am surrounded on every side by robust maples, white pines, and elegant larch, a thick tangle of bittersweet honeysuckle, and the rampant porcelain berry as I kneel on the sweet-smelling earth, planting beans as the light fades. The varieties of Phaseolus vulgaris are rare, collected by seed travelers from distant places, and I am a willing and joyful conservator. New Mexico, Tuscarora bread, raffiofi, purple stardust, shinnecock. As the first star appears below the moon, fireflies rise among the grasses, flickering like earthly stars on familiar terms with the soil. Swallows dip off toward night, and I press the last of the varietals one by one neatly into the row. This silt loam remembers the moment, as do I, as the last of the seed, nightfall, fills the furrow. Flash, the firefly, as the living seed, too, remembers the silt. Thank you. Lovely to listen to all of you.
Thank you, Scott. Our next reader is Kate Rex.
Okay, right. Spotlight has highlighted your video for everyone.
That just means we can all see you now.
Oh, I see. All right. What video? Okay. Right. Well, like everybody else, I have to thank Lise and Liz. Liz, I don't know about, but I think we've got a lot to thank you for. And Lise, particularly for your foresight and your inspiration and your dogged organization. We all need that. And the poets who everybody's glowed, you know, because we're doing something that's so important, I think. And the poetry's just been fantastic. I'm really knocked out by it. We just heard this, it's evening time here, but this morning, I'm speaking from France. This morning we heard that Putin's put his nuclear deterrent on special alert. So even more than ever, we have to hold our fellow human beings in that area and the rest of the world close to our hearts. I think that coming together this weekend has done something really special. It's a chance for us to state what matters and, in a sense, to stand witness, you know. And if there's anything in the butterfly effect, maybe we'll make a difference. I think that's what we can hope for. Now, these poems I'm going to read come from living in a small village just below the Larzac plain in the south of France. The first one is observational, and it sort of called out, as Lise knows, because I've gone on endlessly to her about it, for two companion poems, which are written with a different perspective. 1. Early summer. A butterfly, the colour of other plants, lands on the tips of a pale blue flower, which struggles to maintain some balance in the wind. It lands untidily and hangs onto one petal, Using all of its legs, it clambers up into the cup with no respect for the fragile parts it uses for leverage. It introduces a disequilibrium that cannot be righted even after it leaves. It's the wrong tone. It's the wrong everything. Its colour next to the pale blue petals excites no vibration. There is, however, some exchange in the centre that benefits them both. 2. The flower. At night, when things slow down, I remember. I remember breaking the seed case open with such a force, then unfolding, stretching out, pushing downwards, pushing upwards. I remember making the internal channels that move my food and drink around my body. I remembered my first beautiful silky green leaves, fed with water and the water and minerals that my roots had found for them. I remember the magic of making sugars with the sun's energy, water and carbon dioxide brought to me by the wind. I remember how I moved sugars to exactly where I needed them. I know and remember that ceaseless movement that flows in different directions. I am here because I connect it all. Now I have a full flower head that dances in the wind. My pale blue petals turn towards the sun. I have pockets of scented nectar, offerings I made for insects who will crawl all over me and carelessly leave pollen they picked up from another plant. Afterwards, there is the letting go. My seeds are scattered, ready for their lives. The insects that drank my nectar have taken my pollen to another flower. I see the whole of what I've been a part of and will take that with me to the stars. 3. The butterfly. Free will at last. The veins in my wings are pumped up. I can fly as far as I can see. No more hanging upside down, enclosed. No more morphing from one body to the next. No more shedding skin. No more having to stay on that same leaf. Just free will. And nectar. I have a different shape. 4 wings, long spindly legs, a proboscis, and feet that grip and taste. Nectar is provided by the flowers. There is an endless supply. I can visit as many flowers as I want and suck it up from each one. But flowers can be unstable and they can be messy, sometimes covered in yellow dust. I do my best to avoid it, but the smell of the nectar makes me forget. And when I come away, my legs and wings are covered in yellow. I scrape it off at the next stop. And this last one is a poem written about a tree branch that I saw when I was trying to probably be a bit pretentious. It's called Barking Up the Wrong Tree. The bark is folded and wrinkled like it's been washed and pulled out in the drain. A rind case to protect the soft parts inside. Softer layers of cells that, while the tree was alive, without ego or fuss, moved what was needed to the right place. Now those same cells are a feast laid out for ants. Together, because they do everything together, the ants make holes in the outer layer and dig down, pulling out the softer tissue, mixing up the layers and nesting in the protected spaces. Oh, I want this to be a palimpsest. I want to know there are remnants of what's gone on before. I want there to be a memory of something more complete that only I can see through channeling. I want to use it as some kind of convoluted metaphor, as a message to those who ignore history. The ants have stamped and embossed the surface. The holes and cracks look like proto-writing, mnemonic glyphs, reminders, glimpses into what was there. Clearly, there's a churning mass of something deep below the surface. I read from left to right. There's a face, a mouth with its tongue sticking out, a figure with outstretched hands, a line of letters that morph from a scar and finish in some dark confusion. There are cracks that run down like tears from other holes. The longer I look, the more I see. 4 holes in the top left seem to be sliding apart. Disintegration, I am sure of it. The ants follow each other with purpose. The marks have started to look like written sound with a grating, slower bass line underneath, scored into the cracks of the bark. I can hear the words it says. Nothing significant here. Nothing significant here. Nothing significant, nothing significant, nothing significant here. Thank you.